It's not because it's the law that it's necessarily going to make any sense. Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, and this is Winnie the Westie, who is distracted by a bus. There has been some updates in the Noor case. You will all know the fact pattern of this case. It was the Minneapolis police officer who shot a woman by firing over the partner that he was sitting with in his car through the driver's side window. I'll get to the fact pattern in a second. There has been some news coming out of the Court of Appeal of Minnesota. From CNN, Minnesota court vacates ex-cop Mohamed Noor's third-degree murder conviction. And for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the tragic and really upsetting facts of this case, I'm just going to read a description of the events from Wikipedia. On July 15, 2017, Justine Demond née Rushchik, a 40-year-old Australian-American woman, was fatally shot by 33-year-old Somali-American Minneapolis Police Department officer Mohamed Noor after she called 911 to report the possible assault of a woman in an alley behind her house. Occurring weeks after a high-profile manslaughter trial acquittal in the 2016 police shooting of Philando Castile, also in the Twin Cities metro area, the shooting exacerbated existing tensions and attracted national and international press. Mohamed Noor was ultimately convicted of second-degree manslaughter and third-degree what they call depraved mind murder under Minnesota law, and he appealed the conviction under the third-degree depraved mind murder, and the Court of Appeal overturned that conviction. Now, why is the distinction important? Well, third-degree depraved mind murder carries with it a greater sentence than second-degree manslaughter, but just for the sake of clarification for everybody out there, I'm going to read those two provisions of law. 2020 Minnesota Statutes 609.205, manslaughter in the second degree. A person who causes the death of another by any of the following means is guilty of manslaughter in the second degree and may be sentenced to imprisonment for not more than 10 years or to payment of a fine of not more than $20,000 or both. 609.195, murder in the third degree. Whoever, without intent to effect the death of any person, causes the death of another by perpetrating an act eminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind without regard for human life is guilty of murder in the third degree and may be sentenced to imprisonment for not more than 25 years. So it's obvious that a conviction for third-degree depraved mind murder is a more serious conviction than second-degree manslaughter, which is why presumably Mohamed Noor is appealing that aspect of the conviction, and he succeeded in the appeal. And when you hear the reasoning for why, you're going to say, okay, that might make sense, but it doesn't make any sense. And it is all going to hinge on the use of the term others under that provision of law. Court of Appeals, State of Minnesota, Respondent versus Mohamed Noor, Appellant. Syllabus: the mental state necessary for depraved mind murder, Minnesota Statute 609.195A 2020, is a generalized indifference to human life which cannot exist when the defendant's conduct is directed with particularity at the person who is killed. The only reasonable inference that can be drawn from the circumstances proved is that appellant's conduct was directed with particularity at the person who was killed, and the evidence is therefore insufficient to sustain his conviction under Minnesota Statute 609.195A for depraved mind murder. Reversed and remanded. Let that sink in for a moment. What they are basically saying here is that Mohamed Noor cannot be guilty of third-degree depraved mind murder because his conduct was not directed at others in general. It was directed at Justine in particular, and therefore doesn't satisfy the criteria for depraved mind murder. Because Mohamed Noor intended to do what he did to Justine, to her specifically, it therefore does not satisfy the criteria of depraved mind murder because it was not conduct that was so reckless at large, not targeting any individual, so therefore he gets acquitted of having done what he did to Justine. At least under this specific provision of law, because his conviction for second-degree manslaughter is still going to stand. We don't need to go over the fact pattern. I'm doing tonight's video.
Everybody, I'd vote for you if you were running in Toronto.
Yeah, well, that's it. Unfortunately, I'm not, but we'll see what happens here. But there's a candidate in Toronto.
All right, well, good luck.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
We don't need to go over the fact pattern in any great detail. Suffice only to say that Justine Demond called the police because she heard someone screaming in an alleyway. These two police officers show up. They go through the back alleyway. They do not see any risk or any danger. The police officer in the driver's side phones in that everything is okay. Justine Demond comes up to the car on the driver's side, puts her hand on it, and Mohamed Noor gets so freaked out, he reaches for his gun, shoots her through the window over his partner in the driver's seat, and hits her in the abdomen, and she dies on the scene. Mohamed Noor's explanation is that he was startled. He thought his partner's life was in danger, therefore he was justified in using the force he did. Ultimately, that was not found to be the case. He was convicted of second-degree manslaughter and convicted of third-degree depraved mind murder, but that conviction has been overturned. The issue before us on appeal is not whether Noor is criminally responsible for Rushchik's death. He is, and his conviction of second-degree manslaughter stands. The issue before us is whether, in addition to second-degree manslaughter, Noor can also be convicted of depraved mind murder. Because conduct that is directed with particularity at the person who is killed cannot evidence, quote, a depraved mind without regard for human life, end quote, Minnesota Statute 609.195A, and because the only reasonable inference that can be drawn from the circumstances proved is that Noor directed his single shot with particularity at Rushchik, we conclude that he cannot. Accordingly, we reverse Noor's conviction of depraved mind murder and remand the case to the district court for Noor to be sentenced on the second-degree manslaughter conviction. Some might say that this is a distinction without a difference, while others might say that this is a distinction that actually allows for someone to get off for a more serious conviction when their act of violence, when their depraved act is directed at a specific individual as opposed to people at large. So imagine you put your car in neutral and let it roll down a hill towards a crowd of people that you see at the bottom without any specific intention to cause harm to any one person, but only others at large. That would be an act of depraved mind murder, whereas if you had the intention to kill one person in particular, that would not be an act of depraved mind murder, at least according to Minnesota law. We have interpreted the phrase in question many times, and we have consistently held that the crime of depraved mind murder is a general malice crime. Our, quote, judicial construction of a statute, so long as it is unreversed, is as much a part thereof as if it had been written into it originally, end quote. And then the Court of Appeal goes on to reaffirm the precedent that had already been set by the Minnesota courts and concludes as follows. We reaffirm our precedent today and confirm that the mental state required for depraved mind murder cannot exist when the defendant's actions are directed with particularity at the person who is killed. Applying the particular person exclusion to the facts of Noor's case, as we must, we hold that the state presented insufficient evidence to prove that Noor acted with a, quote, depraved mind without regard for human life, end quote. For that reason, we reverse Noor's conviction for depraved mind murder, Minnesota Statute section 609.195A, but because Noor was additionally convicted of but not sentenced on second-degree manslaughter, we remand to the district court to sentence him on that charge. Conclusion, for the foregoing reasons, we reverse the decision of the Court of Appeals and remand to the district court to vacate Noor's conviction for depraved mind murder and sentence him on his conviction of second-degree manslaughter, reversed and remanded. So that is the decision, and I know a ton of people out there are going to find it morally and legally objectionable, but apparently it is perfectly in line with the interpretation of the law under Minnesota law. So that is it. It's not going to make people happy, but
the judges have spoken.
To be discussed with Robert Barnes during this week's live stream. And if you like my videos, you like my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment in the comment section below because it feeds the algorithm.
Don't be a fool! Stay in school!
If you want to support the channel, all of these support links are in the pinned comment. If you want to find and support Robert Barnes and I on our locals page, you can find us at...
Oh, man, one of these days I'll get this right. There we go. Viva BarnesLaw.locals.com.
Local supporters get a ton of exclusive content. All of my content will still be on YouTube and Rumble for those of you who want to find me there. But more important than anything, take care of yourselves, check out on friends and family, make sure everyone around you is doing well, and now you know your vlog. Peace out.